All right, Mr. Chairman, we are live.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Friday, October 30th joint emergency meeting of the Litchfield Board of Selectmen and the Litchfield Recreation Commission. In attendance today, we have the Board of Selectmen, the Litchfield Recreation Commission, we have Town Administrator Brown, we have Chairman Burke of the School Board, we have Dr. Jetty from Superintendent of Schools, and we have Corey Azbicki, Business Administrator from the school. Also in attendance, I believe we have representation from the Litchfield Youth Soccer. For us today, we have a permit to gather. I'd like to open it to Chief Sergeant, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, honorable board members and members of the public, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to this matter. On October 27, 2014, the Board of Selectmen adopted an ordinance related to public demonstrations. And the purpose was for there to be a regulation of public demonstrations on municipal property, commons, public highways, and sidewalks. Public demonstrations can include assemblies, gatherings, protests, marches, pickets, or parades on municipal property. These types of demonstrations are prohibited without a permission issued by the Litchfield Board of Selectmen. Permit shall be granted by the Selectmen subject to such terms, conditions, and restrictions as the Selectmen may deem appropriate, including without limitation, reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. And the Selectmen may limit the total number of persons involved in the public demonstration and designate the physical limits and/or areas in which the public demonstration may be carried on, as may be necessary to protect the health, safety, welfare, and convenience of the public and those involved in the public demonstration. The application for a public demonstration permit is a simple one-page document. You provide information such as the name of the group or the organization, the primary contact person in charge of the demonstration, what type of demonstration it is, the purpose of the demonstration, the proposed location for public demonstration, the time, and also the number of persons expected to participate. Upon the application being submitted to the town, it is turned over to 3 different department heads: the chief of police, the chief of the fire department, and the superintendent of the Litchfield Highway Department. We then participate in a department head routing sheet. So we'll review the application, its location, the number of people, and we address any concerns that we could see, or say that we have no issues. We sign off and submit it to the Board of Selectmen for final approval. Earlier this month, we received a application for public demonstration permit from the Litchfield Youth Soccer League. The person in charge was Jen Burke. And this was for, as we know, the 7th annual Halloween JAMBOREE soccer event to take place at Sawmill Brook soccer fields. It was expected to have 280 participants with 300 spectators. As most of you are probably aware, every Wednesday at 2 p.m., the Emergency Management Committee meets and we discuss various events in town, the current COVID-19 pandemic, and we address concerns and share information with each other. Since we started meeting, anytime there's going to be a gathering of people, we discuss these issues in our meetings and make recommendations and make sure that whatever event is taking place or what we're reviewing is done safely or does not occur. Initially, I presented this application to the committee, and there were some concerns with the number of people and wanting to know if the Youth Soccer League had put together any safety plans for the event. I was tasked with reaching out to Jen Burke, who got back to me right away and had already put quite a bit of effort into developing a safety plan. Some of the things that she highlighted to me that would take place if the event was to occur was that they had gathered numerous signage that they were going to put throughout the sawmill parks and fields stating to inform the public that a mask is required. It was mandated that all visitors must wear masks, that the coaches must wear masks, and players who are not actively playing would wear masks. She also advised me that they had purchased extra masks to hand out to people in the event that someone did not have them. Litchfield players, as a current practice, before their practices and games, have their temperature taken, and this was going to continue for the Jamboree. They were going to also ask the visiting teams to participate in a home health check. Hand sanitizer would be readily available across the area and including with every coach. They had decided to limit spectators to 2 per child. All teams were reported to be from New Hampshire, except for one team that was from Peabody, Mass. She explained to me this was a reduction in teams, as they would have 33 as opposed to the normal 50. She highlighted the space distance between the 2 fields. And in regards to the concessions that would be sold, everything would be individually wrapped. Condiments would be single serve, and the volunteers would be wearing hand sanitizer, would be using hand sanitizer and wearing masks. So after receiving this information at the next emergency management committee meeting, I provided the group with the information that Jen had given to me. We appreciated their efforts to do the best they can to make it a safe event. We still had some concerns as a committee, given to the large number of people that would be at the event. We also had some concerns that if this type of an event would be in compliance with the Attorney General's office and the Homeland Security. Fire Chief Brazel, who is the Emergency Management Director, decided that he would make contact with these 2 organizations to see if they had any insight, if this event, if they would offer whether this event should move forward or not. And the chief is going to speak further to that. I know obviously another concern of the group was having an out-of-state team come in. And I believe recently Peabody, Mass was coded as a red zone in Massachusetts. So Jen did a great job submitting the permit. She was great to work with. The fire chief had a couple of follow-up questions. She got right back to me, and I was able to provide him with that information. And I'm happy to turn it back over to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Greatly appreciate that. At this time, I'd like to give Litchfield Youth Soccer an opportunity to speak to the event and give everyone in participation today an overview of their security plan and what the event entails. So if Ms. Burke would like to take over, she's more than welcome. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I know that there are lots of things going on in today's world, and I really appreciate everyone taking the opportunity or giving me the opportunity to present this to you. So I'm going to do my best to attempt to share my screen, and hopefully all of my WebEx experience over the last couple of months will help me here. So all right. Excellent. So, Chief, thank you so much. You did such a great job of kind of outlining some of our plans. I don't want to be redundant, so I'll do my best to move through this quickly. Obviously, you know, the LYSL has been in existence in Litchfield for well over 30 years. I have personally been a board member for 9. This is my 3rd year as president. We have held this event for the past 6 years. We picked it up from the Hampstead Club. We actually pulled it together in 12 days in our very first year. It's been hugely successful. It's really geared towards younger children. So it's the 8 to 11 age group. And so we run this event every year with the full intention of the proceeds going towards scholarships for Campbell High School graduates. So we are one of the largest revenues, I guess, for scholarships coming out of Campbell, providing $3,000 scholarships each year. We currently have in the program, we have 94 travel players. So travel players are individuals who play on teams that travel throughout the state. So we have 7 teams with 94 players on that right here out of Litchfield. And we also have 110 recreational players with us as well. Since the start of the pandemic, we have been very responsible in our response, making sure that our first priority is keeping our children and our community safe. That said, there are a number of changes that we made in order to make sure that we would have a safe and successful event this year. It's not lost on me that you're going to have to do things a lot differently in a pandemic setting if you want to have this type of event. I will highlight that there are several other sports, outdoor sports, that have successfully held tournaments since July. That would include lacrosse, softball, baseball, soccer, all throughout the state, and largely without incident. So normally our program would be able to host up to 54 teams. We knew right off the bat that we wouldn't be able to have the social distancing required or the space required to have appropriate social distancing with a tournament that large. So we made the conscious decision to reduce it to 32 teams. We actually currently just had a team drop due to a potential COVID exposure. So we are at 30 teams right now. So you can see the team breakdown by county. I do have the town names available as well, if that is of interest to anyone. All the teams play in 3 25-minute games. And so in the past, when we would schedule, we would actually schedule with purposeful breaks in between. So most often the teams would be there for about a 3-hour window. And we did that somewhat self-serving. It helped with our concession sales. It also was a really fun environment. We knew that that wasn't the safest thing to do this time around, so we purposely changed the schedule. And you can see my little chicken scratch drawing over here that shows we have scheduled breaks in between each group, and that's to allow for groups to come in, play. They play their 3 games, and then they move out. The only exception to that is in our 9v9 league, which you can see is the U11, U12 girls. Because they only have 1 field, that group will actually be there for a little bit more of an extended period of time. But otherwise, we have the schedule set up so that each age group will move in and out in a 90-minute window with a break in between. Obviously, we had to enhance our safety protocols at the beginning of the summer for first our tryouts, and then for our recreational season, and then our travel season as well. We further enhanced those for the purpose of the Jamboree. If you visited Sawmill or even our Brickyard or Innisfield, you will see that these signs are prevalent everywhere. So this has been a requirement from the beginning of the season. For our travel program and our recreational program, we did say if you were sitting and socially distant and you're with your family, it was appropriate to pull your mask down. For the Jamboree event specifically, that is not the case. We want masks on at all times unless you are actively engaged in play or eating one of our yummy cheeseburgers. So we've got that signage up there. You can see we've got separate game balls for each field. The officials will have wipes for those game balls, so they'll be cleaning those balls regularly, because we do, of course, have throw-ins in the soccer program. Obviously, you heard about our hand sanitizer. All coaches will have it. The home health checks, additional masks that we have on hand, as well as wipes, and then the limit of spectators to no more than 2 players. Our concession guidelines are very simple. I'll breeze through this. It's all individual, so individually prepared and wrapped. And then we purchased individual condiments for ketchup, mustard, cream, sugar, all of that. And then the way we set up our volunteers for concessions this year is different as well. So if you've ever been to the event before, it was kind of always a free-for-all at concessions. We really have specific stations that we have set up. So we've got 1 person in charge of drinks. We've got 1 person that's specifically cashier. Everyone has to wear masks, obviously, everyone wearing gloves. So that's, an adaptation this year as well. As I stated earlier, I feel as though the league has been super responsible through all of the pandemic with our policies and practices. We were advised that the school had some positive cases. We shut down our 4v4 recreational league for 2 weeks, even though we really only needed to do it for 1. Out of an abundance of caution, we pulled 3 teams from the Columbus State tournament, literally 2 days before the tournament was to happen because of potential exposure. That actually wasn't, but we felt as though out of an abundance of caution, it was important. As I mentioned, there have been numerous programs that have been holding successful tournaments without COVID exposure throughout the state. I would like to point out that we have Nightmare New England and trick-or-treating right here in town, where there will absolutely be crowds, and I feel as though the crowds we have at Sawmill will be less than that. I do want to real quickly mention My personal experience in my professional life is as a district human resource manager for the Home Depot. We're an essential retailer, and I support 11 stores, 6 in Massachusetts, 5 in New Hampshire. It's my job to make sure that COVID doesn't spread for my associates, and I keep my associates and our customers safe. I take that very seriously. I would never put forth a plan to our town that would put our community at risk, certainly not our children at risk, including my own children. And also, I actually missed this at the very beginning. Just prior to the meeting, we made a decision as a board. This event was scheduled for Sunday, November 1st, this coming Sunday. Due to Mother Nature and this lovely snow that we have out there, we are looking to push this event to Saturday, November 7th, so to next weekend. We just can't guarantee that our fields are going to be playable for Saturday, or for Sunday rather, so we're pushing it to next Saturday. I share that because I want people to understand I'm not going to need the town to tell me if things progress with COVID-19 and it becomes unsafe, either for Litchfield or around the state. I don't need you guys to tell me to cancel the event. I promise you I'll be responsible and do that. I really have taken, and the board has taken very careful measure to make sure that we've got the appropriate and safe measures in place. These kids, our travel programs have been playing throughout the state since August. Many of the same teams that would be coming to the Jamboree are the teams we've been playing with, and it has all, again, been without incident. So again, I thank you for your time, and I am willing to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for that presentation. Members, does anybody have any questions concerning the Jamboree?
I don't have questions, more or less a statement. Right now, we have, between the 3 counties represented, there's 835 current cases. I'm not sure how many are in Essex County, Mass. It just seems to me like we're asking for danger here. We don't want to be that town that does something that gets a spread going. We've been pretty lucky, and I'd hate to go against that.
And if Peabody, Massachusetts, one team from Peabody, Massachusetts is the deal breaker, I'll remove the team. If that is what is felt, the majority would feel more comfortable.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions amongst the group?
I just have a quick question. So, Jen, on a standard weekend during the regular season, how many teams would be coming in and out of Sawmill on a daily basis, on a normal Saturday or Sunday?
Great question. So Saturday, September 26th, we had all 7 teams with home games. So we had 14 teams here, 7 Litchfield, 7 from elsewhere, in a 6-hour time period between 11 and 5.
This is Peter Ames. Can I ask what the Emergency Management Council discussion was on Wednesday? If there was any conclusion on that, or what the concerns may have been, or why they thought maybe this would be something we could do?
So, Peter, once we get through any questions we have for Litchfield Youth Soccer, I'm going to open it up to Chief Fratzel, who's the Emergency Management Director, and he'll go through that whole portion of it.
All right. Can I ask a question for Jen then? First of all, thank you for your work with the league. We're very grateful, of course, with the Recreation Commission for what he does for kids here in town. So I just know it's certainly appreciated. My question for you is just the nature of the travel teams. With 31 teams, do you have a sense of how far those teams have traveled, and do we have a record of where they have been in the last 14 weeks for quarantine purposes? Or 14 days, excuse me.
Yeah, so I have appropriate contacts for all of the coaches who subsequently have their contacts for all of their parents. I can read you the list of where these clubs are coming from. It's all the same clubs that we're playing with nationally. So the only exception to that would be Peabody. So and yes, we know their schedule for the last 14 days. That's all posted in public information on the NHSL website.
And have they all been within New England in the last 14 days? Do we know?
Jen, one other quick question. What is and I'm not sure of the current rules for mouth guards in your league. What is that?
Our kids are too little for mouth guards, so there are no mouth guards in the league.
Jen, Andy Ruggles. I just had a quick question regarding the soccer board. Have you met and voted on continuing with the event in the last?
yes.
Okay, I was just curious what the outcome of that. Everybody's in support, or?
Yeah, so we've had early on in July, we started our conversations at each of our monthly meetings. I provide a Halloween Jamboree update. In addition to being the president, I'm the Jamboree coordinator. So there has been no change in direction from the board collectively.
Steve, do you hear me? It's Kevin Lynch. Steve, I'd like to hear from Mr. Fritzl and what the state has recommended.
Yep. As soon as we finish with any direct questions to Litchfield Youth Soccer, we will get Chief Fritzl on the phone. Does anyone else have any questions to Litchfield Youth Soccer?
Peter, again, if I could ask one more, Jen, just for the question about enforcement, because your the plan you put in looks very thoughtful and I think very in line with what is appropriate. But my question is, with that many people, how do you plan to enforce it? Do you have volunteers kind of lined up for that? Because that's where I think the challenge has been when people are pulling down masks for being too close. Someone has to step in, and that's not easy to do. So just love to hear plans about that.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a great question. So pretty much the entire board is going to be on hand. We also have a number of volunteers that will be on site assisting us. We are fully prepared to safely enforce our mask requirement. We're not going to get into a battle with someone. If they are adamantly against it, we will ask respectfully for them to leave, but we want to make sure that our board members stay safe as well. But we do plan to patrol the field with field marshals that will be asking people to pull their masks up if they've happened to sit down and pull it down. We are fully prepared for that. And we've got a couple of board members who look forward to it.
Thank you.
John, it's Kevin Lynch. My only concern is going to be the lower 48. That team coming from Peabody because of the red count down there right now, and that's a big concern. I understand you've had soccer all through September, October, still, and this is just about the last of the year you're going to have it the way it looks. But that's my biggest fear. Okay. The thing is, if you cut back on the amount of people, spectators, and the way you shifted it, so there'd be more space, so you'd be less crowds, is what I'm hearing. And you're on the outside, and I hope it's a windy day. Okay. But it will be safer. And the way you're talking now, from what I heard the first time, that you put the plan, I think it's a well-written plan, and you got the team for it, the group. You may want to have the police walk with you.
Thank you. And again, if after, if removing the PBD team will ease everyone's fears, I know they will be hugely disappointed because they've been in regular contact, but if that's what we need to do to make this event happen, I'll do it.
Okay.
Jen, I have a quick question. How many teams are lined up to play at one time? And then the teams that aren't playing at that time, is there a plan for where they'll be or what they'll be doing?
The teams that aren't playing at that time actually won't be there, right? So the way that we've got it set up, they come in the window. It's so the first division comes in, they play their 3 slots, and then all of those teams exit. And then the next division comes in, they play, and then they exit.
Okay.
The most we'll have would be 8 teams, with the exception of our 9v9, but that's kind of off to the side. Our 9v9 only has 4 teams in it. And because we only have 1 field for that, that group will actually be there a little bit, but they will be required to be massed together as a group on the sideline. Hope I answered your question.
Do we have any other questions for Jen? Okay, hearing none, let's open it up to Chief Freitzel, who's the Emergency Management Director. Chief, are you with us? Because I'm driving.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. Certainly I commend Jen and the board and the Youth Soccer League for putting together a very comprehensive plan. And while, I think you've covered everything and, done a very good job. The numbers, I think, are the biggest concern. As Chief Sergeant indicated, this came before the Emergency Management Committee last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday. Some questions came up. He reached back out. Jen, you were phenomenal with getting the information back and forth, and even the follow-up questions that I had. During our meeting this past Wednesday, 2 days ago, a couple other questions came up, and actually a question came up about, what would the state, would the state review the plan, state have input and so forth. So I did reach out to Homeland Security, spoke with Director Harper, who was very hesitant with the whole concept and the numbers, and actually directed me to the Attorney General's office, because it kind of follows the guidance, and the governor's executive and emergency orders fall to the Attorney General's office for interpretation and the responsibility for enforcement. So yesterday I spoke with Attorney Matt Broadhead from the Attorney General's office. Attorney Broadhead has been basically the point of contact to the State Emergency Operations Center from day one. So he's very well versed in everything going on. We spoke for a little bit. I kind of laid out everything that I knew that had been shared with me. And he certainly, the governor's guidelines permit it with obvious restrictions and so forth, which we both feel that based on what I've seen and shared with Attorney Broadhead, that the soccer league has addressed all of the items in the governor's guidance for youth and amateur sports. However, he was extremely concerned at the numbers, and just because of recent events in the last 2 weeks and numbers across the state spiking, and it kind of, bouncing right back into our schools and so forth. So he was very clear from a state perspective. It can be done provided it follows the guidelines, which is masks because there's over 100 people, social distancing, so on and so forth. He did express a concern about one of the biggest challenges they've had and the biggest complaints they've had at the state level is the lack of wearing a mask, or in some cases the complacency, and in a lot of cases the just blatant disregard or wanton not wearing it. So that was a concern that he did share and express. But he was quite candid that he did not believe it was a very good idea for this to go forward. But from a state opinion, it can. But he was very candid that he didn't think it was his professional opinion. It was not a good idea to move forward with it. So that is what I have. I did ask. We didn't necessarily take a vote. Our emergency management committee is not that formal, but I did ask if in the meeting on Wednesday if anyone supported moving this forward with a recommendation of approving it to the Board of Selectmen, and there was none. So the committee basically the emergency management committee does not recommend this happen. And I'm happy to entertain any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Greatly appreciate that overview. Does anyone have questions for the Chief?
Hello, this is Rich Lascelles.
Welcome back, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you. Now that this event has been postponed for 8 days or so, would it make sense for us to reconvene this body for the middle of next week, let's say Wednesday, and in the meantime, come up with any ulterior plans that would help for this this event to take place. We don't know what. I mean, we've been given a little bit of some breathing room here, rather than canceling it outright. I mean, between now and next Wednesday, there could be a lot that takes place to either make this more of a go or more of a no-go. So what I would suggest is that for us to reconvene this group next Wednesday to see if anything has changed in the meantime.
Well, Chief, from an emergency management standpoint, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I certainly don't, you know, I don't see an issue with that, but in fairness to the soccer league, they really need a go, no go for their timeline, I would assume. And Jen, certainly correct me if I'm wrong. You know, Peabody is a concern. I did, you know, watching the news last night, it did make the high risk category for Mass for community exposure. One of a multitude of communities in Mass that did. But, you know, we're also, Merrimack, Hillsborough, and Rockingham counties are right up there as well. You know, an interesting tidbit on the news last night was that every 102 seconds, there's a every 2 seconds, or a little under 2 seconds, there's a new case of COVID diagnosed worldwide, and every 110 seconds there's a death. And I understand. Trust me, this has been, you know, I've been heavily involved in this from the get-go, more than anybody ever wants to be. Yes, it's predominantly in older, higher risk populations, but we're seeing it start to take effect in younger people and so forth. And whether, you know, the deaths and the serious health complications aren't necessarily there in the younger population, but there are long-term medical impacts from this virus. So I mean, I don't know that pushing it out a week or 4 or 5 days, I guess at this point, if we were to look at the middle of next week, you know, it's going to change. Quite candidly, I don't see the numbers going down between now and then. I only see them going up on a statewide level, you know, and on a nationwide level. So I don't know that, you know, I think it's just kicking the can down the road, quite candidly. But certainly, you know, we can take it back up next Wednesday at our emergency management meeting, and see where numbers are at, where things are at. But, you know, I would hate to see us, you know, end up in, you know, having an unfortunate situation and this end up being you know, one of those, situations that, you know, makes the news and not in a favorable way because of an outbreak.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any other comments to Mr. LaSalle's recommendation?
May I make a comment?
Of course.
So just a couple of things. Well, postponing the decision to Wednesday does put us in a bit of a predicament, especially if it seems as though the will of you all is to not move forward with this event. So I'm more a proponent of us making a decision today. That said, you know, I recognize the Massachusetts piece of things being a concern. I would say that there are people from Massachusetts every weekend at Spooky World, but I get it. I would easily remove that team. We would also be prepared to hire a police detail if one were available to help with mask enforcement, if that would make people feel more comfortable. I recognize and I appreciate all the work that both chiefs have done around this, but we've got several tournaments that have happened in just Columbus Day. The Seacoast Express tournament was 131 teams over 2 locations. There were no incidents that happened as a result. We're talking about 30 teams with way more mandates and precautions. So I get it. I don't want the town to be placed in a poor light either, but I also strongly believe that the risk is very low for this event.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions for Chief Reitzel? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to give our health officer, Deputy Chief Nickel, a chance to speak from a health and from a fire safety standpoint.
Hi, good afternoon. I've heard both sides, and Jen, I think that I understand what you're trying to do, and I think that with Spooky World, you're talking something a little different. It's all timed with the amount of people that can go onto the property. It's private property that the police, there's, if you take your mask off at all, you're escorted off the property. And right, I mean, we would have no way of knowing with people coming from out of state, whether somebody was infected or not. I just, if we could guarantee the enforcement, that would be one thing, but I still just, echoing what the Chief Reitzel is saying, I just think that we're asking for trouble at the wrong time. If this was 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, before the numbers really started going up in our state, I would be all for it. But I just see that the numbers are going up, and even seeing what's going on in our schools and in our town itself right now, the numbers are going up very slowly. And I would just hate to see a super spreader event happen. And, so again, I can't recommend it. I'm sorry. I just don't feel comfortable with it.
Do we have any questions of Deputy Chief Nickel? Seeing that Deputy Chief just brought up the school impacted, I would like to just give a chance for Chairman Burke or Dr. Jetty or Business Administrator Isbicki to speak from a school standpoint, because I know we just went through a portion where the school was closed police GMS was closed for 7 days due to COVID exposure and lack of staff in order to keep the school open. And if nobody would like to comment, that's fine also. All right, based on that, we'd like to have a general discussion of all the members. Are there anything somebody would like to say before we open it up to public comment? I do not believe we have anybody from the public here. Actually, Chris Cesario may be here.
I have a question for Jen.
Go ahead, Jack.
Jen, is it possible you could cut back on the amount of spectators you're going to have? Because it seems like they almost outnumber the kids.
Yeah, we did limit, thank you for asking that question. We did limit spectators to 2. If we were to, if it was a difference maker, I can absolutely change that to 1 spectator per child.
Okay, do we have any other discussion?
Hey, Steve, it's Chris Cesario. Sorry, I did just jump on, and I was on mute trying to talk when you said my name earlier. And I'm just jumping on late here. A question for you as far as the tournament goes. And I've missed this entire presentation, but is there a number that the board or everyone, Deputy Chief Nicole, sorry, I didn't see his last name, that they are comfortable with, and what would that number be from a participant / team standpoint?
Either of the chiefs like to answer?
This is Chief Freitzel. I don't know that it's a number. Is 50 the number? Is 500 the number? I can't say that there's a specific number, Mr. Osorio. It's the grouping of people, the close proximity and so forth. Obviously the guidance from the state is any gathering over 100 masks are required. So I couldn't give you a number that would be, say that it's going to be okay. It's really just any gatherings and I know this, that the CDC and the health agencies are actually coming out with guidance as we get into the holidays on even small family gatherings. So unfortunately, there's no playbook for what will work, what won't. It's all a calculated risk. With the numbers, the number of teams, and using an average of 8 to 10 players plus 2 spectators, and if it's only 2. If you've got somebody there that's got multiple children playing, are they going to make one sit in the car while the other one's playing? I guess I don't have an answer for that question, and I don't know that there is an answer.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I kind of expected that that's what you'd say, and I guess the reason I'm asking is I think when you hear the word tournament, jamboree, whatever, right away you kind of think, okay, big crowds, it's an all-day thing. There's going to be tons of people in and out, and I'm just trying to compare it honestly to any Saturday morning at Sawmill, that we'd have with all the rec teams that are playing there. I mean, we have 3 fields. 11v11 is the biggest one, so it's got the most people. We got 7v7, we got 9v9. We got back-to-back games, people coming in and out, travel teams. It's just, from a number standpoint, I don't know that it's that far from any other Saturday in the way that we have this tournament kind of, the way the teams are scheduled to play. But again, on paper, it sounds big. I mean, it does. 30 teams. Oh my gosh, 2 to 3 people per player there and everything. It just, but I just don't. I guess I don't see where it's that much different than any normal Sunday, especially when our travel teams are also playing at home. And I would ask anybody on I don't know how many people on here are down there at Sawmill on Saturdays, or anywhere in town where there's sports being played over the last 8 weeks that they see. I'm looking at the names here. I don't recognize too many of them. So maybe you're just not familiar with the soccer program, the rec program, and travel program.
This is Corey. I think Dr. Jetty wants to speak in terms of the school district, but he can't seem to unmute himself. Can anyone help out with that?
Yeah, whoever's meeting this is should be able to just click on his name there and hit unmute. I actually sell WebEx for my day job. Not sure who the host is. Oh, Steve Weber. It looks like it's you. You should be able to unmute him.
Steve, you're currently on mute.
And Steve, you're on mute now.
All right, sorry about that. So as I click Dr. Jetty, it immediately remutes him.
Try it again now that he's muted.
No,
right click, maybe.
There it is.
Okay, I think I have it.
All right, there you go.
Can I read?
Sorry about that, Mike.
No, no worries at all. I had no clue how to do it, and I'm just standing here in the yard. So anyway, thank you, everybody, and I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in a little bit. Obviously, this is not a school event, but we are certainly interested in making sure that we keep all the students in the schools safe. And to that end, our whole plan has really been built on personal responsibility, and we've really emphasized that with families and with parents that they need to take the personal responsibility to make sure their children and the activities they engage in are safe. And I know that there are some families who have chosen not to participate in events because of that. And other families have chosen to kind of carry on and to participate in activities. And in terms of the numbers in the school system, we did do the closure at Griffin. There was a cluster outbreak, but that was several weeks ago. And it was all sort of interrelated. Obviously, it's a cluster, so they're interrelated cases. And, from that, part of the reason why we had to close is because of staff that were then forced into quarantine because of exposure. So that was a key part of why we had to take the action that we did. And so that's important to keep in mind, too. And I will tell you that some of the outbreaks were related to hockey. Hockey and soccer are two very different sports. One is inside in a different setting than an outdoor setting. And even the families, when the state put tight restrictions in for hockey, their choice was to participate in hockey in different ways and to find other ways to participate in hockey. It was not to stop playing hockey. So I just think we have to keep in mind that the personal responsibility piece has been a hallmark of what we have asked our families to do. And by and large, they've engaged with us on that. So that was my input on
it. Steve's Kevin Lynch.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I like to agree with Dr. Jetty on this too as well. The difference here is that it's outside, okay? And the counts that we're getting are more related to an indoor situation the numbers are coming from. Anything on the outside, you don't see as much. It was good all summer long because everybody was outside. Now it's getting in, everybody's starting to go in. There are those who are not responsible to take care of them. I want to say this kindly, have this fear of a mask, and I'll let it go at that. And that has created some of the higher counts, especially in the restaurant business. And the type of things that the state is stepping in to stop right now. I'm actually feeling comfortable with this proposal, that it could work out because it's outside. If it was more of an inside sport, no way would I even think this. Okay? And we're getting into colder seasons and stuff. It's windier, it's fall. I think you'll be better off. That's how I feel about it. I think that the team has done a good job of proposing it. The state, we're meeting the guidelines of the state, probably not the opinions of all. Okay? But we're meeting the guidelines. And they are guidelines. The people are going to assume responsibility for themselves, and it has to be enforced. Okay, that's my whole point here. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, just for a moment, my biggest concern is, I think you have a fantastic plan in place. I really do. I do think it's going to be tough to police because people have their own way of, dealing with masks and et cetera. If for some reason this does become sort of a spreading event that does impact our schools, I think we're going to collectively have a big problem on our hands. And I just don't know that the reward is worth the risk. That's my opinion.
And Steve, I would just chime in on what Kevin was just talking about. I don't know if anybody watched the World Series the other night, but in the middle of a game, they pulled one of the Dodgers players because he tested positive. Now that's a group that they test their players every single day. They're playing outside. You just have no way to know if one or two people come in with it and nobody knows about it, all of a sudden you do have a big event. And again, it will impact the schools and it'll impact everything else. And I worry about the town's liability.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. At this time, we'll open it up to public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment? Seeing none, I'd like to turn it over to Chairman Collins, and just have him have a conversation with the Recreation Commission, and we would greatly appreciate their recommendation back into the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we've in the past deferred basically to the Board of Selectmen for recommendations on or guidance on the closing of facilities and for all of our sports. But we can discuss that as a group here if we would like. I don't know if we, Steve, are you looking for a motion from us for a formal recommendation, or?
I mean, since you are the governing body of the recreation fields, I would like to see how the rec board formally feels about having this event.
All right, so I guess as a group, we would look for a motion on what our recommendation would be to the Board of Selectmen for the event for Litchfield Youth Soccer. So any of our current members, Andy Ruggles, Chris Burns, Mike Bosky, Peter, and Steve Gannon. I don't know if any of you guys would like to make a motion, and then we can have a second and then some discussion.
So may I ask a question to the people in this related to the schools here before we do that?
Of course, go ahead, Mr. Byrne.
So, I mean, being the parent of two kids, both at GMS right now, and you know, with them being home for whatever it was, 10 days last week, you know, if another incident does occur, I mean, is there a plan in place, or is there any expectation as to what level of outbreak would need to occur to really just put a hold on things and shut things down for the, you know, for the remaining or foreseeable future, I guess?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So the school district does have a reopening plan. That plan involves that the administrative team meets every single day. We look at the numbers that are happening in our county, in surrounding schools, in our schools, and then we make the best judgment that we can on how to contain any cases that popped up. And obviously we do that in consultation with DHHS, who helps to guide us on what they're seeing and what their advice is. But ultimately it is left to the schools. There's not really a state plan that they impose. And so we were talking today, now that Hillsborough County has gone red and Merrimack County is red, Rockingham County is red. So there's substantial spread in the area. That one case today could cause a different reaction from the schools than back when we were green or yellow as a county, because there wasn't as much spread in the area. So the reality is we're going to play it day by day to see what the case is. And, you know, I think the other part is the contact tracing piece. So we've done a good job of forming cohorts and isolating students and staff so that they're not having as much contact as they certainly did a year ago. And so all of those measures are helping us to feel more confident in our ability to contain a reaction that we would have. But the answer to it is different today, now that we are in a red environment with more spread than it was even 2 weeks ago when we were yellow.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions of our members? Anybody want to make a motion for a recommendation?
Not everybody at once now.
I know.
Andy, I'll make a motion to approve the Halloween Jamboree.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mike Bosky.
Yep.
I will second it, Steve Gannon.
All right, so we have a second from Steve Gannon. So we'll have discussion on this. So Mike, what you want to expound on your motion, or?
Well, you know what I mean? When this all goes, I mean, the whole discussion around this is it's the number of people, but it all depends on the enforcement of the policies. You know what I mean? The mask wearing, the distancing, the health checks. I mean, the schools have been doing this for their athletic events all year. The soccer league has been doing this for not just the LYSL, but the state soccer has pushed down that these are requirements or strong recommendations as well. I mean, personally, I know, knowing our soccer league and knowing the way things have been done this year, enforcement of the mask wearing, enforcement of the spacing will be taken probably more seriously here than most other venues you've seen across the state. There will be people who are vigilant in enforcing these, the mask wearing and everything else as people enter and exit the facility. I mean, the other thing is that, you know, we're thinking it's been in discussion that the pure number at the field at one time. Well, it's really 4 different numbers on the field at 4 different times, because with the breaks inserted into the schedule, there will be groups just leaving and groups coming back in. So it won't be the overall number is an overall number divided by 4. So, I mean, I while I know that, okay, as of 2 weeks ago, this would have been great. We would have, you know, I don't know what the Attorney General would have said back 2 weeks ago, besides, you know, yeah, it falls within the guidelines of the state, whether he recommended it, didn't recommend it, but the change in, you know, the percentage going from, you know, 1 to 2, which has now put us into the red, has, you know, modified our opinion of whether we can police this event or not. I just think that knowing the group of people that will be in charge of this and how things will be monitored, that again, it will be safer than most other events or dinners or anything else that you're going to by yourself. So,
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I want to comment. So I'm going to oppose the motion for a couple reasons. I think, you know, first off, at the Rec Commission, we have listened to our town officials and others about recommendations for these type of things. And what I'm hearing is that none of them, including the state, are recommending that this is a good thing to go forward with. Sounds like it's something we could do, but that doesn't mean we should do it. And not one of them is saying we should. So number one, I want to defer to the people that I think are in the best position to make that determination. Secondly, around the enforcement piece, that's a big concern, not only for masking and social distancing, but what we're now learning about these outbreaks from the state that are popping up. It's not because of good plans. Good plans are often in place, and this has a very good plan with it. The fact is, people will not do what they know they should do. Not just masking, but like quarantining, their self screens. We are relying on other people to do the right thing. What we're seeing is more and more that's not the case. This is a lot of people that are out of town, and so I definitely worry about that, despite the best intentions and work of folks in town that would be there to police that. And thirdly, it sounds like this is now an increased risk for if it would impact the schools. If this was back in September, yeah, I think it would be a different scenario, but it's not. Those 3 counties are all red, and it's trending in the wrong direction. So I think the window for this type of thing is closing, if not closed, and I feel it's closed. It's, add to the list of casualties for 2020, because it's certainly a good thing to do in other times, but I don't feel this is the time for it.
This is Steve Gannon. I would reiterate exactly what Peter said. I agree with him 100%. I believe the Litchfield Youth Soccer League has done the due diligence and tried to protect everybody and put safeguards in place. However, with the recent spikes in the counties around us, including our county, all becoming into the red zone, I do not believe this event is in the best interest of that town. I think the exposure level is too high, and it'll have a direct impact on our school children, our schools, as well as the Litchfield families.
Mr. Ruggles, you want to add something in?
I'll add if Andy doesn't want to. I see him shaking his head.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm obviously a big supporter of youth sports. You know, I had a daughter that played U10 softball this summer. We didn't do any major tournaments, but you know, I've got and my other daughter is involved in other activities. But you know, my main goal really throughout this is just keeping them in school and keeping them, you know, whatever we can do to make that happen. So I'm going to oppose this as well. You know, just given the recent uptick and spikes that we've had in the area, that's my main concern.
Thank you. So, Andy, I guess because this is kind of an informal vote, because it's not one of our meetings, but Andy, so we've got three, sounds like, that are opposed, one that is for.
Yeah, I typically would, you know, be all in favor. I love tournaments. I mean, it stinks, but I am not in favor of it either. I just think of the people working in town, and if we did have to shut down schools again, I just wouldn't want to have to face them and tell them that they're going to have to be home for a month with their kids, or, you know, or somebody's going to have to quarantine. I just can't support it, unfortunately.
So, I guess, Steve, from the Rec Commission, our recommendation would be not to approve based on the feedback from the members here. I mean, we would love to see it done, and I think if something were to change numbers-wise, which obviously it probably wouldn't, but, you know, again, my other concern, and I never really added it in there, is while this might not be a super spreader event, we're sort of stacking them together with Halloween this weekend, the voting on Tuesday, and then that you sort of, you know, you're really creating that huge net that one case could easily hit, you know, exponentially to other areas. So we're sort of in that area. I mean, and the down part is I was looking at the long-term weather. It's looking at sunny and 63 degrees that Saturday. So, you know, it would be a very nice outdoor event. People wouldn't be sheltering in tents or anything. So,
Thank you, Chairman Collins. I greatly appreciate that. Before the Board of Selectmen discusses, I'd like to open it again to public comment. If there's any members of the public that would like to comment. Hearing none. Board of Selectmen input, questions, motions?
I would make a motion that we do not recommend hosting this tournament at this time.
We have a motion by Barry. We have a second by Mr. Pinciero. Discussion.
I think my problem is the amount of people involved, especially coming from out of state in an area that is readily got enough problems. I'd like to keep our people safe as we possibly can.
I'd like to add to that, even though I'm the one who said that it seemed to be a wise choice, but I'd like to congratulate the Rec Commission. Steve, can you hear me?
I can, Kevin.
I would vote against, I would follow the recommendations of the board.
Yeah, I think with the state the police department, the fire department, the health officer, and the rec officer, and the. I mean, it's just the way to go.
Yeah, if the rec commissioner want to do it, I'm happy with that, okay?
And it's sad. I know the work it takes to doing tournaments. I've run many tournaments over the years, and it does stink. But just this is a weird year. You got to throw
Lousy year.
Yeah, throw it.
You know, I feel that that the Litchfield Youth Soccer has done a fantastic job putting a plan together. A huge support, and I know that is really important to the kids. My big concerns I have are Rockingham, Hillsborough, and Merrimack going into the red. The issue we have Essex, hockey being shut down, even though I know it's different from hockey being outdoor. With the impact at the families when the school had to pivot to a remote model for 7 days. It also is a little alarming that we learned today that one of the teams is already pulled because they had a so I just, even as much as I would love to see this event go, I just don't know if I could support it.
Decision made.
Well, we have to take a vote because the Board of Selectmen is the final voting authority on the permit itself. Any input prior to being made? Not sure if Rich can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
No, I mean, at this point, with everybody saying that it's not a good idea, and life is full of risks. We all understand that, and there's a finite amount of risk no matter what happens. But with everyone in the chain of command here recommending that it not happen, I would tend to agree with that.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Larry?
In favor of not hosting it. Yeah, so
the motion.
Yeah, the motion, yes.
Mr. LaSalle's?
Aye.
Mr. Lynch?
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero?
Wake up, Jack.
Aye.
Also an aye. Motion carries 5-0. We greatly apologize to the Litchfield Youth Soccer. You guys have done some great work, and I apologize that we're not able to approve the permit at this time. I'm hoping next year will be better for all the youth sports within town. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Larry.
Seconded.
Second by Mr. Piero. I'll do a roll call. We have Mr. Collins. He's an aye. Mr. Ruggles. Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Pinciero.
You second it.
Aye.
Mr. Lynch.
Aye.
Washi.
Aye.
Mr. Ames. Yes, good. Mr. Gannon.
Aye.
Who did I miss here? Mr. LaSalle's.
Aye.
Mr. Lynch.
You already got me. Aye.
Good. I am also an aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Beat Navy.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.